if you want to grow, you need to go and put yourself in the uncomfortable spot of the opposition a lot of the time.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. If you're looking to take your career to the next level, you're going to want to listen to this episode. With us today is Wendy Alexander. She is the founder of Happy Career Hub. She has a plethora of experience that she's willing to share with us today and tell us more tips and tricks and more about her journey. Wendy, so thankful to have you here. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. It's morning in Australia, so I'm wide awake.
Good morning. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. Always nice to catch up with entrepreneurs from around the world. We want to know more about your journey. What were you doing before that kind of led you into starting the Happy Career Hub?
So the Happy Career Hub evolved from some support and help I was giving people in the workplace anyway. So I had gone through a major change in my life 27 years ago. My relationship ended. I was pregnant and about to become a single mother. And all I could think was I need to make more money. So I started on this journey of talking to recruiters and hiring people. I had a natural ability to write. I loved words and loved writing. So I'd been writing my whole life since I was a kid. But then I started to refine my resume and use my love of words to tell a different and probably a better story about my achievements and what I could offer companies. And then I started running that past these hiring people and recruiters and got feedback from them. And so I started testing things out in the market and then ended up landing a role that tripled my income. And so I'm on to something here. And I also learned some interview tactics from these hiring people as well. And between my ability to write and reframing my whole professional story and practicing the interview style, I ended up in this role. The people around me who knew my story about hitting rock bottom with that relationship and then coming out of it with financial debt and a single mom started to come for help. And these were colleagues and friends and family. And that's actually how the business started. But it was very much a part-time business because I was too busy paying off debt and working in corporate. But then when I moved into the entrepreneurial journey of a solo business owner was when I went through midlife. And that was hit by menopause and all the changes that come with that. And I no longer felt inspired in corporate anymore. So I was like, I've got something. It's very part-time. I wasn't doing a lot with it, but I've got something here that I can use. And then made the change about 5 years ago and have been full-time in the career coaching space since. So it evolved slowly over time. The force out of corporate was the physical and emotional and mental challenges that I went through during that time, during that change. And then thinking, I did a process. I actually do this process with a lot of people that I work with. I started to dig into my story and what do I really want to do? What am I good at? What do I love doing? And what can I do that I know will help others? Because for me, I noticed a thread in my life. I've always been helping people in different spaces, working with the homeless, working with disabled kids when I was a teen. There was this thread, but you need to dig. A lot of people don't dig and then they don't find the pattern that actually bring them joy. And so once I identified my patterns, where my skills were, what my transferable skills were, that was when I made the shift.
That's
And I
amazing.
love my work now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an incredible journey. I hear that from both a lot of entrepreneurs and people who are kind of between career changes. They are trying to make more money. They're trying to make purpose and use of all their skills and their talents. They want to be appreciated in the work that they do. So whether they find that through a better career or working for themselves or any other fashion, you kind of let those opportunities and doors open up for you. And then you walk through them. You said, this is the path I want to take. And it's gotten you to where you are today. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I think people struggle with making change. And my message to a lot of people is don't try to make big changes all at once. I've actually never seen that work. I've never seen people succeed. You need to come at it from chewing that elephant one bite at a time, walking that 1,000 miles one step at a time. Because I think when you inconsistent small action and you get those little wins along the way, that's when you continue to stay motivated, because it's very easy to give up, especially when you're becoming an entrepreneur and you're going on that journey. We do take lots of losses. Not everything works out right off the bat. There were times when I was transitioning from corporate where I was earning a bucket load of money. I was in high powered roles and into my own business. And there were times I would go, what am I doing? The steady paycheck is not coming through the door. You get used to that steady paycheck, especially if it's a big one. And I was traveling and I was able to travel and do lots of things. I was like, I'm transitioning into a business and I have to be very focused about my marketing. I have to be very focused about getting results for my clients, because at the end of the day, if you don't get the results for the clients, business loses its reputation fairly quickly. So it was a lot of things that I was navigating at the time. But I think if you have identified a strong enough reason for why you want to be there, whether it is transitioning into a new job or getting a promotion or going on your own entrepreneurial journey, once you know the very strong why, I think Simon Sinek talks a lot about what's my why, or identify your why. It is the thing that keeps you motivated. But you also need to understand that you need to, or I encourage people to go at it at pace that's reasonably comfortable for them, and that's going to see them have these small wins along the way. Because if you don't have any wins for a year or 2 years, very easy to become discouraged.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of people who are scared and resistant to change ultimately now want to change, because that fear of change, that's is less scary than the fear of staying the same, making the same
Correct.
paycheck, working for the same boss, doing the same work, not having those same opportunities. But again, it's the small changes you need to make so it's not such a disruptor to your life, because people like normal. They are used to normal and consistency. So to make those changes, it's a calculated risk, but you have to make those changes over time in order to become someone new and try new things. So it's just a challenge between people, right? We're just
Yeah,
people.
absolutely.
And now you help people specifically with their careers, people who are probably feeling stuck, or maybe their life is a mess and maybe the career is kind of like attributing to that. Can you go through what it's like working with you, how people can kind of take some tips with them to further their own careers?
So one of the foundational piece that I do with people is actually on my website. There's a free resource there, and it's called Mining Your Story. And what I do with that process is I take people through this worksheet, and it's about identifying the patterns in your life, because in our life, there are always clues and threads as to where we can excel, what comes naturally to us. What do people come to you advice? Because we all, like, for example, when I was going through, people would always come and talk to me about writing things because they knew I loved words. They knew I had this ability. I mean, I've written people's wedding speeches for them, right? Some bridegrooms, I've written their wedding speech for them. And so what I say to people is mind your own story and start to identify what's the skill patterns in your life that just is a natural talent for you, that you could literally close your eyes and do it in your sleep. That's one clue. The other clue to start identifying skills that can be transferable and useful to other people. For example, if you're wanting to change jobs or go into another industry, what are your transferable skills? Because we all have them. And they're usually the soft skills. They're the emotional intelligence skills. They're the problem solving skills. They're the leadership skills, communication skills, all of these things. And you need to highlight those skills more as opposed to job specific skills. So if you're wanting to make transfer into another industry or a new job, people are going to be more interested in those transferable skills, especially in today's market and especially since the pandemic. So the pandemic changed a lot of things. The whole working environment changed. We were locked in. Yeah, in Melbourne, we were the most locked up city for 200 and something days, long time. So people work from home. So employers learned that the sky wasn't going to fall down because people were working from home. People were actually quite productive. And so they started to introduce these hybrid environments. But what employers started to look for, because what they noticed as the pandemic, people started coming back out of the pandemic and coming back to the office and doing the hybrid, some days at home, some days in the office, there was a level of trauma from that isolation. And that's across the world. With the client, because I work with people from across the world, there was a level of trauma. And so What they started looking for was these leadership skills, these teaming skills became far more important. Yes, they want you to have job specific skills. So if you're in AI, you need to have some emerging tech skills and so on. But your ability to collaborate with people, to lead people, to help people through difficult times have become far more important. So those are now the skills that you need to highlight, right? A lot of people don't know that. And then one of the other things I often work through people with is, what have you overcome in your life? Because therein lies your resilience skills, and everybody's looking for that. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, people are looking for people who are resilient, who are flexible, who can adapt as things change. And so what I've seen is a lot of people don't want to do that foundational piece, but the foundational piece of identifying your talents, your skills, the things you've overcome, how you've achieved, and what specific things you did to achieve, that becomes the piece that helps do everything else around a career. So when you're writing your resume and your LinkedIn, you learn to brand yourself very well when you understand your foundational piece. And when you're in an interview, you have stories to reference, examples to reference. And so that's one of the first things I go through with people. And I always say to them, don't try to avoid the foundational piece. And that applies to everything in life. If we look at our health and any area, if we try and avoid setting the foundations, we don't usually have solid ground to stand on when we're trying to make the change. And that particularly applies to your career. Do the foundational piece, don't avoid it. I know for some people it's like, oh, but I don't want to do this. I just want to get out there and apply for a job. Well, you want to be powerful in your application. You don't just want to go and hit any job and willy-nilly apply for a role that might not suit you. Because here's the other thing. If you start failing at interviews or failing at job applications, well, that has a spin-off effect. Dents your confidence. People know people. The world is small. So it gets around very quickly, especially among recruiters and hiring people. This candidate is applying for roles that doesn't actually suit them. And if that starts getting around, suddenly your reputation as a strong candidate is tarnished. And so I suppose the key message is, don't avoid setting the foundations, because it actually builds everything else from there. And I've seen people who do that foundational piece then go on to excel in interviews. They excel in writing their brand, their resume brand and their LinkedIn brand. Even if they have to submit a cover letter, they become very strong at that. They learn to very succinctly and very compellingly sell themselves. You have to understand your story. You have to own your story. You have to be proud of your story, or you can actually go out and sell it.
Yes, absolutely. Some great advice here. And I love that you focus more on rather than trying to apply to as many jobs as you want, similar to like marketing. Would you spend a bunch of money on advertising just to get leads that come in if you haven't worked on your website or what your offer is or how you present yourself or what your story is? All those things can help increase the conversion rate and probably give a perception that you're more valuable. So how do you get this pay increase? Learn some hard skills, some value, work on that foundation piece, and then you can build off of that. So I love that input here. Something really interesting that you shared is the post-COVID trauma that happened around
Yeah.
the world. And it's interesting to try to self-reflect on that moment and what came from that, because our human behavior, our lives changed quite a bit, and we're still kind of struggling to reacclimate, get back to it, because some places there's still worry and threat of COVID versus some who didn't have that much in that perception that way.
Yes.
So it's interesting to see how we were all affected, how it's changed the workforce. We're seeing big changes here. Are there any other changes you've seen post COVID that employers should be thinking about, candidates should be thinking about as well?
Well, I think for the younger generation, I think people have missed the fact that a lot of our young adults and our teenagers were in isolation. So there was a big rite of passage that got missed in their life, right? When we get to a certain age, 18, 17, 18, 19, or the young adult years, we go through various rites of passage. And I don't think people realize the psychological impact of missing that. And so what you have is the generation coming through at the moment. And so I'm seeing some university students graduating. They're still struggling with that confidence. They're struggling with that ability to communicate. They're struggling with person connection. And these are the things that build and networks are key in business. They are key in job hunting, all of these. If you want to get the prime, juicy, really high paying role in life, they happen in the networks. Very few of them are actually advertised. They happen through networking with people, through conversations with people, through people referring people. And I think that is a piece that was impacted greatly during that time. And I think it's going to take a while for people to recover from that, because I still see the young ones struggling in that space. But I even see some middle-aged person. I see people my age struggling in that space, because we're on the phones, we're getting all our information from our phones and our iPads and the computers. And so then when it comes to that in-person conversation, people are still challenged in that space. And that's very important for networking, especially building the kind of networks that's going to open doors for you. That doesn't happen on computers and gadgets. That happens with communication, with you potentially going up an elevator and running into a senior manager in an elevator and being able to deliver your elevator speech in like 30 seconds. But people can't do that, right? And so that's where I see that has been a challenge. That is one of the unfortunate results of COVID, right? And I think that that's not something that people are going to recover from that quickly, because when there's a big piece missing, our rite of passage or our learning, a stage of learning, it takes a while to get that back. And you have to practice. And what I see is people kind of still hiding away. They're still a little bit reluctant. It's just one of the reasons I'm also going on podcasts now myself and talking to people, because for me, it's about having a conversation. The more we have real conversations, we're recording this, but I'm assuming it's just going to pretty much go out, right? People get to see how we're communicating, the topics that we're discussing, what's important, what matters, what can help. Because entrepreneurship is not just about making money, it's about connecting. In fact, it's more important to connect, because that's what eventually brings the clients that makes the money, right?
Yes, absolutely. The more we can lead by example and show people how to connect and communicate, that may inspire them, and just lead by example again to say, okay, this is how it can be done, should be done, just so we can get back to how things used to be, but in the right way. We can take some of the positives
Yes.
that came from COVID, but also fix things that kind of became disrupted during that time. But again, it'll take some time. This is exactly why I do the podcast as well, to meet, connect
Yeah.
with people. It's great to have conversation, real authentic people, because I think humans just naturally want to connect. And when that was disrupted
Yeah.
and became taboo to want to connect, that changed things. So we're still dealing with the
Yes.
after effects now, but it'll be interesting to see how we can help kind of provide for the next generation, even for our own generation, our friends, colleagues who are kind of struggling in that area as well. Because you seem like someone who always loved to learn. You, during our pre-chat
Yeah.
interview, you talked about learning, but also wanting to share the information with other people. From all the YouTube videos, podcasts, the books, resources that you've used, is there anything you would recommend to other people who are either trying to learn more about business essentially, or more focused in the career space? Do you have any resources that would help them a lot?
So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I also do have a premium membership on LinkedIn, and I find LinkedIn's learning amazing. So I'm currently doing a course in generative AI, just out of pure interest, because I'm like, this is a market. This is something is happening in the space. I'm a writer, and I've suddenly seen an opportunity. This is a new emerging technology. I don't know that much about it, but I'm a writer. And then I started seeing that they're looking for writers to train AI. So people have some fear around AI, right? And for me, it's like, well, get to know it. So how do I get to know? I can use my interest in writing to go and train AI models. That means I can become one of the responsible contributors to AI. It doesn't have to be a doom and gloom thing. It doesn't have to be something that we fear, because you have to remember AI has to be trained by humans. We're still superior,
Yes,
right?
AI technically can't create. It's just imitating and replicating the human instances and input that we put into it.
Correct. And so that's why it's my message is don't fear it. So go and learn. Be a lifelong learner is what I would say. I recommend people like Simon Sinek. I think he's got great resources, and he does do that piece about start with your why, which is where I also like to start. So he's a resource. But I also say to people, open your mind and look at diverse content. Even with your political standing, your social standing in life, try to look at both sides. Even if you feel resistant to it, because I tell you, the more you broaden your mind, the more you're going to learn and the better you're going to be able to communicate to a diverse audience, which is what you need to do. You can't only, none of us can live in echo chambers. There's very little growth that happens there. If you want to grow, you need to go and put yourself in the uncomfortable spot of the opposition a lot of the time, which is what I do quite often. And I will say it is uncomfortable sometimes because we have certain thought patterns that's programmed in us and we're very attached to our belief systems. But if you're prepared to challenge your own belief systems, and this is across the board, you will find that you become more relatable in the workplace, more relatable in business, and a bigger connector.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing the resources and also mentioning AI because, again, AI is just like any other tool that comes out. There's a drastic shift in the way we used to do things. And now it's up to us to understand how it fits into business and the workforce and our lives and everything. AI can be pretty cool. I mean, what it's doing now,
Yeah.
there's AI assistants that can book meetings and schedules for you. It can
Yes.
create it can create pictures, it can create video, it can create music, full songs, instruments, vocals,
Yes.
everything. So to see what it can do, I just appreciate that you learning more about it first and understanding how we can adapt into it as opposed to just being resistant to it. Because again, it is a big change, it's a shift, but the more responsible people we can have feeding into those best practices, I feel like the better it's going to be.
Yeah. And look, one of the things I learned in my life, that was from growing up in South Africa in a very difficult environment, coming to Australia and so on, is that whenever I feel a resistance to something within me, I know that I'm supposed to go and learn about it because it's the path to huge growth. Whatever you're resisting is what you're actually supposed to go and explore.
That is a great
Because
way to
that's
look at
the
it, but it's so
pathway
true.
to opening your mind, opening your eyes, and understanding that perhaps your perception can be changed. And I think the big thing for all of us is to challenge our belief systems and to challenge our perceptions. The more we do that, the better we grow.
Yes, absolutely. Now, for those who are interested in learning more about Wendy and getting connected with her, where should people go to find out more about you online, find your offer, and get connected?
So the website is .com, and I have that free resource that I spoke about, the mining your story is right there. And then Wendy Alexander is my handle on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I do a lot of free videos, free tips around interview coaching, career, all of that is all on LinkedIn. I couldn't get Wendy Alexander, so I had to put my second name initial in it. So it's Wendy A. Alexander. There's a double A in the middle. But that's where you'll find me. Those are the two places I'm very active.
That's perfect. And we'll provide the links available down in the show notes and the description so you can get connected directly with Wendy here. Now, one more question we have is what is the most effective marketing strategy that you've encountered? Seems like it's focused more on the building relationship aspect. So, what has been the most effective way to build relationships?
Well, for me, it's around the networking. And when back in my day, I used to have to go to meetups and hand over your business card. Now, this is where I encourage people to really start using LinkedIn because you can build your relationships online. This is a digital platform. It is where I've had most of my success. I've got a decent following on LinkedIn. It is where most of my current clients come from. And what I do there is I connect with people. And when we start having conversations, we chat about, I always give people career tips. And I find that the more you give, if you're prepared to like people's posts, share their posts, give your tip on something, people get to know you and you build the reputation of someone that's trustworthy because it's about being trustworthy. It's about giving. Always be prepared to give first before you take. And LinkedIn is available now for us and the generations coming up behind us. It's not going anywhere. It is the professional networking platform. So use it, is my tip. Go and use it.
I love that. Yes, we have to use all the resources available to us, and it's a perfect place to get connected with other people. And I do suggest for those who have the capabilities to maybe start a podcast. It's a great way to have these one on one connections with
Yes.
amazing people to talk about everything that they're passionate about. This is like the ultimate dream to communicate, connect, and work with other people. So definitely recommend it. And Wendy, we appreciate you coming on to share your successes, your
Pleasure.
journey, everything you've done. Congratulations to you. Any last parting wisdom to our audience here? Anything about your offer? Last words of advice?
The way to get the offer is at the website, and I don't sort of overly promote that. People will find it, they hopefully find it useful. But the last piece of advice is take small action daily. I have seen success from people just taking that consistent action. Do something daily towards whatever goal it is you have, whether it's a health goal, a finance goal, a career goal. Because when you're in action, you're in movement. And the moment you're in movement, energy is flowing around you to make something happen. When you're stagnant, when you're not doing anything, when you're paralyzed by fear, you stop the energy from working around you. So be in movement about your life, and it doesn't have to be big action. Small action steps lead to big success.
I love that. Wendy, great advice. Thank you so much for your tips and tricks and bringing some enthusiasm and charisma to the podcast. Great having you on as a guest. Hope you have a great rest of your 2024 and looking forward to the successful 2025 you're setting up for yourself. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you.